Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the 81st episode of Mastering the Machine, sponsored by the Automation Academy, Automation Consulting, and IO Central. And this is the 14th of December, 2024. And our topic today is the art of learning. And what prompted this is for the last 2 months, I have been studying for certification and a credential for Ignition. And Ignition is a SCADA platform. It can be used for a lot of different things, but primarily HMIs and SCADA in the industrial realm. And I decided to go through and talk about how I am approaching learning this, since I am an older guy. I am 64 years old and have not been in college for a long time. So how I went through the learning process back then and how I go through it now are very different. And I hopefully have learned a few things about learning, and I'm going to share those with you today. So these other things, Beckhoff and TwinCat, I have done previous webinars on CODESYS. I've done a webinar on that. Haven't done anything on AI yet, but that is something else that I'm studying, and I'll explain exactly how all that works. But first, we're going to kind of pay the bills here. So what is the Automation Academy? The Automation Academy is a membership site hosted on automationllc.com. And it is a subscription-based site where you can get training videos for Allen Bradley, Siemens, Beckhoff, Omron PLCs, some job and aptitude assistance, system integration topics, lots of different topics on there, some very specialized, lots of demonstrations of PLC software and actual courses. There is a library there of training and technical documents and some software that you can download and run, including some free PLC software. There is a community with interest groups called IO Central, and this is open to anybody. Anybody can join IO Central and create a profile and interface with other people there and different topics. And we do have these regular events, Mastering the Machine webinars, about once a month. The last one was in November. This is December. So yes, indeed, we do them about once a month. And this episode, the Mastering the Machine webinars, is named originally after a document that you can download on automationllc.com or the Automation Primer, automationprimer.com. And you can find these on your friendly website, right, your internet. So go to these sites and check them out. The downloads are free. IO Central is free. And you can look into what it takes to get a subscription membership to the Automation Academy. There are for some fairly low-priced options. This kind of goes with what we're doing today, right? It's all about learning. And in order to learn about PLCs, of course, you can go take a PLC class, and I do indeed teach PLC classes, both for a Canadian company and for myself, and sometimes for Automation NTH, which is a local integrator engineering firm. But, you know, people want to take PLC classes, they sign up for those, but then sometimes they don't have all the prerequisites that it takes to understand PLC programming. So in high school, we learn all about reading, writing, and arithmetic, as they say. Maybe if we're lucky, we learn a little bit about electricity and maybe mechanics, physics, things like that. Those are advanced classes in high school. But then by the time we get to college or trade schools, maybe we've taken some more advanced classes. Maybe we get into engineering, learn about digital and analog, motors, you know, the theory of how motors work, but maybe don't do a lot of hands-on. Maybe do the hands-on and don't get much of the theory. You know, how do sensors work? Motion control. What is a numbering system that is used in industrial automation? A lot of maintenance guys don't know that. What is BCD and how does it work? How do you make bits become numbers? Maybe if you're lucky, again, you get into computers and coding. That's not a hands-on thing. That's programming. That's a lot of what I'm learning now, even 30 to 40 years after I first learned about computers and coding. That's an ongoing process. Machine safety goes hand in hand with PLCs. Machine vision, robotics, definitely directly related to PLCs. Something that is like a PLC is a DCS. I ask people in my PLC classes a lot of times, do you know what a DCS is? And most of them don't, unless they're in process control. But that almost does the same types of things that a PLC can do, but in process control. How do HMIs work? What is IIoT? The IT OT convergence, that's something we talk about. How does networking work? You're going to need to know that if you're going to study PLCs and industrial automation. At a higher level, SCADA, ERP, and MES, how does that work? Database, I'm learning some of that now. AI and machine learning, working on that right now also. And then the little question marks at the top kind of signify that, you need to figure out what you need to study for your career. And that's going to involve a whole lot of other things that you may not even know what those things are right now, but you will learn them as you get into your career. So without any further ado, we are going to move on to why I kind of created this webinar about the art of learning. And learning is an art, right? Learning, a lot of times people just take tests and they just want to pass the test, but did they really learn anything? So in my case, I have a goal and I really do need to learn this stuff because I need to use it. So rather than just getting through, sometimes people take shortcuts in college and they just want to pass the tests. Rather than doing that, I really, really want to learn this stuff. And I'm going to have to prove that I know it, right? Both to my customers and as part of this Ignition program that I'm taking right now. So my goal for Ignition is to use it for systems integration. And I already have been using it since about 2016, but I've been winging it. I do a lot of work down at ABD. I've talked about them on my webinars before. That's American Beverage Depot down in Miami. And back in about 2015, they installed Ignition for the first time and started doing applications like batching and direct control applications, interfacing with the PLC. And then as it's grown, it's now been, coming up on 10 years. They have involved MES and ERP and human resources and shipping and receiving and lots of other things. So I've gotten to do a lot of pieces of those, but I did not formally learn Ignition itself by taking the course and getting the certification. So my customer, the owner of ABD, actually suggested, he said, well, since you're not working with automation NTH for the foreseeable future until maybe next year, why don't you take the certification? You would be very good at it. You've already been working with it. You need to learn all the details of it. And of course, it's free to go through the course itself. So I had practiced a lot at ABD, but now I'm doing the formal certification and doing it in a very specific way. So I've had to teach myself how to study something like this. And it is harder than you might think. This is probably several hundred hours of study. It has taken me 1.5 months so far, and I am exactly 83% done with it. I will finish next week, and I will have what's known as my credential. Credential means that you have passed all of the challenges, and I'll explain that on the next page, kind of go over what you have to do for inductive automations, inductive university, right? So the way I've been doing it is I make an outline and I am handwriting a lot of notes. And I don't know if you can really see this here, but so far, this is how much notes I have. It's a lot of pages, if you can see this, right? So I've been handwriting these notes, and that reinforces what I've read, right? And then I watch their videos. So handwritten notes, and then there's a test at the end of the video. And the tests are not really all that simple. They ask you much more difficult questions than most of the online courses that you would ever take. And I'll maybe give an example of that in a couple minutes. But in any case, I have worked on this religiously since November 4th, and it is currently December 14th. So I'm 40 days into it. It is ongoing. As I mentioned, I should be done with it next week. I am going through the inductive university. I'm going to drag that over here and show everybody kind of what that looks like. So if you go to their website, you will come to this point, and this actually runs a gateway, right? So I'm on my local computer here, and this is all installed. But from here, I can click here, and I go to Inductive University. And again, this is all free, right? And you come to something like this. And I purposely brought up the very first course that you would take here, Ignition Overview. And as I mentioned, right up here at the top, this shows that I'm 83% complete going through all these modules. If you click on one of the modules, you will get something like this. You can run the little video. It tells you all about how it works. Don't know if you can hear this or not, but it's playing right now. And
in this lesson, we will do a review of the ignition software.
Somebody narrates it. So what I do here, my technique for learning this, is the transcript is down here. And this is where I first write the notes that you saw on my camera, right? So I write all this down. I take whatever the pertinent information is, I put it on a sheet of paper. I write down, what is this video? How long is it? And here's the details about it. Then I watch the video, and I sometimes take some more notes, right? So I've written all the pertinent stuff here, but if something jumps out at me, then I write that down also. And then when you get done with 3 of those videos, in this case, going through all those things, then you take the challenge, right? And the challenge, once you complete it, it will say something like, okay, after this, after these 3, you will be 1% complete, right? If you're going through this. So I did that on the first day, November the 4th. And I want to say at the beginning, I was getting maybe 3 or 4% a day. I'm getting up to, I've had, the most I've ever done in a day is 7%. And that's a heavy day of study for all this. And I do get tired, right? I start in the morning at about 7:30, and I finish up usually 4 or 5 o'clock, and sometimes do other things because I do own my own business during that time. But anyway, that's a little bit about how the Ignition course works. 1.5 months into it, I've used these resources, Inductive University. I have opened the user manual, but much of this course is the user manual, right? It covers the same things. And then this is a little more details about Ignition itself. So if you get done with all the challenges, you read it, watch the videos, take notes, do whatever else you need to do, you will get what's called a credential. And it will tell you after you complete every percentage, it will say you're on your way to earning a credential. I think maybe there's a little certificate or something like that. Then to get the actual core certification, first you have to already have your credential. Then you pay them $350, and there is a test. And I believe, if I read correctly, you can fail the test once, and then you have one more chance to take it. And if you fail it again, you have to pay another $350. So it used to be free, but I think they got tired of having to do all the paperwork and stuff like that. I have talked to, several people who have completed the core certification, the gold certification. A lot of the people from Automation NTH had done that. They did both the core and the gold. I think most of them took a year to do the gold, and they got the core done in, they said, a month to a month and a half. It's taken me a little longer because I'm a little bit older, and again, I am really taking a lot of notes because I really want to fully learn this. I don't just want to pass the tests. I think if I would just wanted to pass the tests, I could probably do the whole thing maybe in a couple of weeks, just because you can retake the tests as many times you want to, the challenges, right? These challenge questions, unlimited retries, but they will randomize them a little more. As I said, the challenge questions are hard. Gold certification, same thing. I don't know if there's a test associated with it, but you do have to develop a full application. You send it to them. You also have to make a gateway, a broken gateway work, right? So you take their application, you troubleshoot it, make it work. So that's part of gold certification. I think you can also go to their facility or maybe take classes in another place, live or online, and you can do the same thing, do the gold certification online with guided structure. But most people that I know have taken at least a year to do the gold certification. There are direct classes and other methods. I think if you buy a certain number of their installs, which are anywhere from $17,000 to $23,000 or even more, and go install them and make them work for a customer. I think if you do a few of those and develop projects, they will also certify you, right? And then you get a certificate of some kind. So that's how that works. So moving right along, this was the last thing that I actually worked on. This took me about 3 years, and I used a slightly different technique in this case. At this point, I was working for Automation NTH 2 weeks every month, and they sponsored me in doing a lot of this because they wanted to adopt Beckhoff as one of their platforms and also teach it to external customers. So I taught, I believe, 2 of these to external customers, about 5 of these to internal apprentices and engineers and things like that. And I did create a manual as part of this, right? So my goal still is to write a book. I'm going to combine this with CODESYS, which I'm going to mention on the next page, and how I've been learning that. And the goal was to also teach a class and use it for myself for systems integration. If you see behind me, I don't know if people can actually see behind me on this, but there are some trainers up here, and I have 2 Beckhoff trainers, 2 different platforms, and then Automation NTH had 1, and that's what we use for the classes. So when I teach a class, I use those 2 trainers, and then of course you can teach yourself. You can load the software for free, and it will run for 7 days, which is pretty awesome for learning. So that's how I learned. I use the Beckhoff Information System, BIS, right? And the website up here is infosys.beckhoff.com. That is the BIS, Beckhoff Information System. I am back. I don't know what kicked me off, but I believe I got kicked off the webinar. Don't know if we had a little internet glitch, but where I was is I was talking about all these things here, right? My goal was to teach a class, write a book. I did eventually write a full manual, taught several classes. Part of the keys to that, it was a little bit different than the way I learned Ignition. I saved images because I knew I was going to use them in the manual. Took a lot of software screenshots because I knew that I was going to have a step-by-step process in showing other people how to develop a program. Wrote a lot of code. Used the infosys.beckhoff.com BIS system to learn a lot of this, and also took video courses at my Beckhoff. If you sign up for this, the video courses, if you go through, I think the maintenance one, and there's a basic one and one on coding. And then I also, I went through all those, and there are challenges there, tests. They're not as difficult as the Ignition tests, but they're still a little bit challenging. And then I also did a lot of interfacing with Jacob Sagatowski's YouTube channel. If you haven't checked him out, if you're into Beckhoff and TwinCat, he is very knowledgeable. He's developed some really large applications using TwinCat. So again, handwritten notes. It's a lot of how I did that. I still have the handwritten notes. I created outlines. They were typed outlines in things like Excel, and I did create a manual. I actually published it, but it is not available to the public because I do not have permission to use a lot of their graphics. It's been 3 years. It is ongoing. As I mentioned, I still plan to put out a full book on it with different graphics in it, right? Now, how does CODESYS enter into this? So my goal, as I mentioned, is to write a book. I'm going to combine CODESYS and Beckhoff together because the Beckhoff is just really the hardware is different, but this is built on a CODESYS backbone, and then they migrated it to Visual Studio, so it's a little bit different. But again, my goal is to use this also for systems integration if needed and teach classes on it. Did the same thing as I went through the CODESYS training, went to their website. You can see codesys.com up there. And then I also bought on the first day it was available a CODESYS controller, productivity 2000 controller from Automation Direct, which is a company here in the US. Don't know if some people are watching from outside the US. You can't get that if you are in another country. They don't export them. But had the CODESYS software, had the Productivity 2000, and went through a lot of the steps that it took to connect to that. And the coding is very much the same as the way Beckhoff works. I also bought the book of CODESYS. That is a $200 and some odd, very large book. I've showed it on previous webinars. It's by Gary Pratt. Also went to the Automation Direct website. They have a little how to hook up to your Productivity 2000 and a little bit on YouTube. Handwritten notes and outline. Been working on that for about a year. It's ongoing, but it is on hold, right? Because I'm doing Ignition and I'm doing the next thing that we're going to talk about at the same time. I just got motivated one morning to go further into AI, right? Now, AI, you can go to ChatGPT, you can buy books on it. It's pretty easy to get started and figure out a little bit of how it works. I bought a book, I think, on creating prompts a while ago. It was like ChatGPT for Dummies, and I got a little bit out of it, but I didn't have a lot of motivation to use it, right? To learn it. I didn't really have a purpose. So my goal is personal use to improve productivity if possible, and possibly create a basic course for the Automation Academy. I haven't decided for sure to do that yet because, like I said, there's already a lot of courses out there. I did sign up for something that is not very well regarded, I suppose, in online. If you look up CODESYS, .io, there is a course there, and I signed up for it. It was $20. I kind of thought it was $20 for the whole class, but it is $20 a month. It's a subscription thing, much like my own website. And the reason it wasn't very well regarded is because the test questions are really easy. They're just kind of fill in the blank and things like that. However, I will say I got a lot out of it because it forced me to go through step by step writing prompts for ChatGPT. And then I'm not to the next modules yet. I just started this a few days ago, but it's going to cover Midjourney, right, which is another AI platform, Jasper and DALL-E. And Jasper and DALL-E are graphic programs. And then all these other things, right, I want to learn them. TensorFlow, PyTorch, something about Google Gemini, that is going to be self-driven. It's not part of their course. I have a friend, a guy named Albert, who uses Copilot Studio, Microsoft Copilot Studio, as part of Azure, and he creates some great graphics, and he does them simply by speaking and doing some things maybe on his computer or his phone, and he can create graphics very quickly with Copilot Studio. But he's a computer geek, so he's really good at doing that stuff. I also get the Neuron newsletter. That was part of what motivated me. Installed one or two AI platforms and played with them. So that's how I learned that a little bit. And then the handwritten notes that I'm going through the course, just like I'm doing Ignition. Been doing it for really less than a week. Although I did get into ChatGPT months ago and kind of tried it on a few things, I was able to make it work, but I didn't really have a lot of motivation. So that's part of what I'm going to talk about next is your motivation, right? And some of the tools that you may need to learn about. So why do you want to learn something? You better have a why. There's actually a book called Start With Why. If you've never read that book, it's probably, I think it's by Simon Sinek. And why do you want to learn something, right? Is it to make money? Is it to actually know something? Is it because you have to pass a test, right? A lot of when we were in college, sometimes we didn't know what the end goal was. I didn't know how I was going to use it in a career, but I knew that I had to learn it to pass a test. So that was my goal, pass the test, right? Not necessarily, I'm not going to use, Bodie plots and Laplace transforms in regular life for anything. So I didn't know what that was going to lead to in electrical engineering. That can be a problem. My methods back then, methods may differ from person to person. Do you have a good memory? If you do, if you have photographic memory, maybe you don't need to take notes. I do not. I have a pretty bad memory. I'm getting older and maybe my memory is even getting worse. So I have to write things down and I have to review it. Do you read fast? Are you a visual learner? Those are both true for me. I read really, really fast, and I notice things like typos, and I pick up on the points, but I don't necessarily have a lot of comprehension. I just read really fast. So I'm able to scan something and get the pertinent stuff very quickly, but then I have to write it down in order to reinforce it. So I'm going to skip the learn by doing and talk about use reinforcement, right, and repetition. Sometimes I need to repeat things 2 or 3 times. A way of doing that is write it down. That's the first thing you do. Then you watch the video and you write some more. So that's twice. And then I go and read the notebook, right? I will have a notebook when I get done with this. I've showed this before, that many pages, and it will be handwritten. I'm not going to type them in. I'm a pretty slow typist. So I am going to reread that. I will put it in a binder and I will be able to reread it for fun, right? On the couch as I'm watching TV, or if I'm on the road teaching a class, just scan through it back again. And then learn by doing, right? I'm lucky. I have a full installation, very elaborate ignition system down in Miami that I can work on. The owner of the company has given me permission to access everything and play with it. And now I know a lot more of what I'm doing. So I can actually probably create my own little gateway, or I think he has a play gateway, if I'm not mistaken. Do online research, right? Under-regarded resource. Wikipedia, people make fun of it, but for technical things, it actually has a lot of valuable information about it, and it's usually pretty accurate. If it's an opinion-based thing, I understand it's not accurate, right? Fake news and all that. Ask your network, right? When it came to AI, like I said, I know a guy who is a very good AI guy, a real computer geek. So when I need to know something about IT or AI, I ask him. Something that I talked to somebody yesterday about, create your own project, right? If you don't have motivation for things, if you don't know how you want to approach learning, create a project, use your imagination and come up with something. Like in the case of yesterday, I mentioned to him, create an imaginary machine and then program it, right? Make an HMI for it, draw the machine with little blocks and things like that, make the blocks move. I mentioned to him, create AOIs in Allen Bradley that will make those blocks move and you can use them over and over again. That's like a productivity tool to a degree, right? Execute the project. You will learn a lot by actually doing it. I have not created a gateway and gone through the practice, right, for ignition. If I go back to the ignition, I have not done, right, all the things that it takes that these challenges went through. Actually created the gateway and gone through everything they did in the challenges, right? They show you how to do that. Put a button on this screen, push the button, access something in a database, write some SQL. I have not actually gone through those exercises. Another thing, I want to mention this because this came up during my ignition study. I'm learning 2 or 3 other things in addition to ignition through ignition. So Python, big part of ignition, right? So I'm becoming better at Python just by writing down all the Python statements that they use when I do my handwritten notes. I use Python already in, Raspberry Pi and things like that, but there are a lot of specific examples of Python right in this free training, right? Practice for free. I'm learning object-oriented programming because they use methods and properties and encapsulation. They use all those techniques in Ignition. As you program, you're going to need to know those. I'm learning SQL. I knew what SQL was, and I've written some SQL statements, but this forces you to do that. They have lots of SQL, stored SQL queries that you have to create in order to create databases, delete things from databases, and they show you how to do all that. So it's not only that I'm learning this, I'm also learning other things attached to it. So I mentioned here, let's see, did I put SQL here? High-level languages, well, I'm learning those, right? I'm learning a lot of things about programming and Python and all those things in addition. So that's mostly it. These are the techniques that I've used. Those techniques work great for me. So your methods may differ, as I mentioned here. If your memory's great, hey, photographic memory, just watch the stuff. You'll learn everything. Some people are brilliant that way. I'm not. So I don't have a great memory. I have to reinforce repetition. I write things down by hand. And again, there's no excuse not to. It's all free, right? Sign up on their website. You can do the same thing that I'm doing here. You better have good motivation. You better have a reason. What is your why, right? To learn all this stuff. And these are all techniques that I use. So hopefully you got something out of this. I see a few people here online with me. I did get disconnected briefly, and I've had a message pop up saying I have an unstable internet connection. They're doing construction across the street, so maybe that's the cause of it. I don't know. But in any case, this is what I kind of wanted to talk about today, the different things that I'm going through studying and the techniques that I'm using, and these really work well for me. I don't really have another method. Of course, some people say, well, you got to buy the books and you got to, no, you don't, right? For all this stuff, now we have all this free information online. So do what you can. Ask your network how they learned stuff. How did you learn IT? How did you learn programming? How did you learn Python or SQL? What techniques did you use to learn that? Anyway, all of these are the techniques I used. And the next webinar will be January 4th. Every year I kind of do a little Happy New Year, talk about whatever, open the floor up to questions or comments from anybody who is attending, and we talk about whatever. I usually talk about the previous year and my plans for the next year, very much like Chris Guillebeau. If you don't know who he is, he does one of these wrap-ups every year. He wrote a book called The Art of Nonconformity. So mine is The Art of Learning Today. His is The Art of Nonconformity. Very good book. It kind of got me started probably 15 years ago into doing these blogs and creating some of these online resources and things like that. That's really the reason I got started was Chris Guillebeau back in about 2006. I started reading his stuff. But in any case, yeah, next webinar, January the 4th. If you're seeing this on YouTube, please give this a like, subscribe. If you are interested in the Automation Academy, at the beginning of this webinar, you can read more about that. You can go to the website and check it out. It is a way for you to learn some PLC topics. Maybe eventually I'll put some Ignition shortcuts and things like that, but really the best place to learn Ignition, just go to the Inductive University website. I did show it on that page, so check it out. And thank you to those who attended today, and we will see you all next time.